Most men will admit that they don't fully understand women, and for those struggling to find a partner, this lack of understanding often leads to behaviours like seeking validation, people-pleasing, and second-guessing. Today's guest would attribute these symptoms to nice guy syndrome. If this sounds like you or somebody you care about, then I'd recommend that you stick around for today's episode. My guest today is Dr. Robert Glover. He's the author of the best-selling book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, which has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. He's also a licensed therapist, coach, speaker, and educator. Robert and I dig into a wide range of topics, including what's wrong with being a nice guy, how to diagnose a nice guy, how being a nice guy is affecting your relationships, how to recover from nice guy syndrome, why trying to please women often backfires for men, difference between stated and revealed sexual turn-ons, how masculinity and femininity influence relationship dynamics, why women are often drawn to bad boys, how to understand women better, why modern dating can be challenging due to evolving gender roles, and why having children isn't necessarily the be-all and end-all. Please note, Dr. Robert's audience is primarily straight men such as myself, so you may not agree with everything he has to say, but I encourage you, keep an open mind and take from it what you can. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Dr. Robert, in your first email back to me, you want me...
We just started with Dr. Robert after we were talking about the Beatles song about a drug dealer. So yeah, we'll begin with that. Dr. Robert, that's in my head now. Thanks.
Dr. Robert. Yeah. Your first email back to me, you warned that you might cause offense to my listeners. Why?
Because you wrote me, and when people say, "Hey, will you come on my show?" I typically, go look them up and see what their show's about and just see if it's a good fit. And I typically say yes to the majority of interview requests I get. And there's another person, same name as you, and they have a show, and it was very, very, very highly Christian oriented. It seemed to be, a core theme of what it was. And even though I grew up Christian, fundamental Christian church, I have 2 degrees in religion, and I was a Christian minister for 8 years, I no longer identify as Christian. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly, a lot of things I say still resonate. I mainly work with men, resonate with men who identify as Christian or religious, Jewish or otherwise. But I can be offensive to people, and I don't believe in religion. I do believe in God, whatever that is. And I do believe Jesus was a prophet and something special. I just don't believe the Bible is the ordained word of God. And I don't believe in man-made religions. They tend to do a lot more damage than good, in my opinion. So when I got, I thought, all right, this guy's really strongly Christian. And I just wrote back and said, listen, I may be offensive to some of your listeners. If you have any Christians listening right now, they might go, turn it off now. He doesn't believe in the Bible. So I just thought I'd be upfront about that. And you said, I don't know where you got that. So I shared the website or the YouTube channel with you that I've been looking at, and found out there's more than one Jason Berry.
Yeah, it turns out, there's a few of us. I was thinking maybe it's the name. Does it sound like really Christian?
That does your name sound really Christian? I don't know what a Christian name sounds like.
Well, because it's called Awaken Out of Context, I was like, oh, does it sound a little bit out there? But yeah, definitely not Christian. I mean, I'm yet to niche down with my audience. Maybe
we just ruled out part of it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about nice guys. How would you diagnose a nice guy?
How would I diagnose a nice guy? That's a good question, because like a lot of things, once you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And it's funny, once people kind of come to understand nice guy syndrome and how it manifests and what it looks like, all of a sudden there's nails everywhere. You start seeing nice guys everywhere. And this is true not just for me, but anybody that's read my book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, or done work with me, my brother's a nice guy, my dad's a nice guy. Women write and says, my ex is a nice guy. It's kind of like now on the internet, everybody's a narcissist or borderline personality, or sociopath. We've all got these hammers now that social media has given us. Oh, my ex is a narcissist. My ex was a sociopath. So to not paint too broad a brush, the nice guy, the way I define it, is a guy, this can be a woman, nice girls too. Nice girls have been around forever. But let's mainly because I work with men, say a nice guy is a man who inaccurately internalized an emotional belief at a really early age that he's not okay just as he is. Now, it's true for most of us walking the planet. We've all internalized a certain amount of what's called toxic shame, this belief that I'm not okay, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable. And we all try to manage that toxic shame in various ways. And nice guys try to manage it by doing two things. One is trying to become what we think other people want us to be. So we're chameleon-like. We'll think, oh, okay, that person likes sports. I'll talk about sports. That person thinks all men are terrible. So, I'll act the same way. There's no authenticity. There's no true self. And so, if I was in a nice guy mode and talking to you, I'd watch you. If you kind of nodded, okay, I got that. If you kind of smiled, like, okay, I'll do that one again. It made him smile. But then if you kind of got a perplexed look or kind of looked up like you're thinking about it or even kind of got a pissy look, I'd go, I won't say that again. So there's just this constant reading of the signals of what do I have to do to be liked and loved and get my needs met. So there's number one. I'm trying to become what I think you want me to be, so you'll like me, so I'll be loved, I'll get my needs met. Second thing nice guys are doing to deal with their toxic shame is they hide anything about themselves they think might get a negative reaction. And for most nice guys, that includes hiding our feelings, our wants, our insecurities, our opinions, our thoughts, and especially our sexuality. Because for most nice guys, culture pretty much universally projects a lot of shame onto sexuality. And so nice guys tend to really hide and push down any clue that they're sexual beings because they think that might get them rejected. It might get them in trouble. It might get them sent to hell, kind of following the model I grew up with, right? So nice guys are walking around really inauthentic. You can't really know a nice guy, what they really think, what they really feel, what they really want, what's really going on in their head, because they won't let you know. And they don't even know themselves. Most nice guys have pushed that stuff down for so long. I'll talk with a nice guy about their needs, and they'll just stare at me like, what are needs? I don't even know what you're talking about. And so the way you probably recognize that you're around, or, to self-diagnose or diagnose somebody around you as a nice guy. Do they seem to be passively pleasing, go along to get along, don't want to rock the boat, avoid being offensive, never truly stand up for themselves? Do they say yes when they'd rather say no? Do they say no when they'd rather say yes? Can you just sense a state of anxiety in them? And there's probably no one thing that's a giveaway. But once you start recognizing the patterns of a nice guy, they really do become easy to spot, which is kind of interesting because my book's been out for 20 plus years. And one of the ways I know it's reached a certain status, the book royalties go up every year. So, it keeps selling more and more books.
Got a long tail.
Almost 25 years after it came out. And that doesn't happen. Most books, even the best-selling books, they're around for 9 months, a year and a half, and then, never heard of them again. Like, for example, best-selling self-help book of all time. I mentioned this to a lot of podcasters, and I get a blank look. It's a book called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. Brilliant book. But it's
on my wish list.
It's on your wish list, yeah.
Yeah.
So many people I talk to go almost a blank look. Never heard of it.
No, I've got it.
It is the best-selling self-help book of all time, but because it's been out quite a while, it's kind of, it's not, up there on the bestseller list. So, one thing I was going to say about the book is now a lot of therapists, and especially female therapists, seem to be recommending the book to their clients. Because what used to happen for therapists, because I'm a therapist, so I know the experience of it. Nice guys would walk into a therapist's office and either they're unhappy or underperforming or can't get into a relationship or struggling in a relationship or they've been dumped for the X number of time and they can't figure it out. And the therapist is not able to figure it out either. He's a nice guy, he's easy to get along with. What's the issue? What's the problem? And so a lot of times in the past, therapists didn't know how to recognize the codependency or the borrowed functioning, as I like to call it, of nice guys. Now, enough therapists have found the book to go, oh, okay, I know this. And so a lot of therapists and a lot of people, a lot of guys say, hey, I walked in, got a therapist, first session, my therapist required that I go buy your book. So that's a sign that, it is now a recognizable pattern that enough therapists see it that they're recommending the book for it. So, yeah, in terms of just, the two core pieces, nice guy syndrome, trying to become what I think you want me to be, trying to hide anything I think might get a negative reaction from you.
And how does it differ from a people pleaser?
I don't know that does differ. Nice guys tend to be people pleasers. Now, one thing I found when I started working with nice guys, it began with me working on me. My second wife, about 2-3 years into our marriage, said, everybody thinks you're a nice guy, but you're not. You're passive aggressive. You don't tell the truth. I can't trust you. You embarrass me. You put me down. I can't depend on you. You don't follow through. Said, you need help. I thought, I'm a nice guy. I'm the one generous. I'm the one giving. I'm the one trying to make you happy. I'm the one trying to do everything right. You're the one who's always unhappy, always in a bad mood. And I thought, but I went and got into therapy. I got into a 12-step group. I got a therapist. I later landed in a men's group I was in for 5 or 6 years. And when I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, it was mainly during that period of my own personal growth. Excuse me. And I was a therapist at this time, marriage and family therapist. And men were coming in to see me, often with their wife or girlfriend, sometimes by themselves, saying, I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I try to make her happy. I treat her better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. It's never good enough. She's, never wants to have sex anymore. She's always in a bad mood. And then the single guys, took me a little bit longer to connect the dots, were saying things. This is back before the word friend zone. They're saying, I've got lots of female friends. That's another way to recognize it. I've got lots of female friends. He's not sleeping with any of them. But, and I'm a good listener. They tell me about their problems. They complain about their ex, the jerk they keep going back to. I'm different than the jerk. I help them out. I do things for them. And they all say, some woman's going to be so lucky to have you someday, but they don't want me. Right? What's wrong? So I started a No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group. And then I just started writing lessons of what I was learning about nice guy syndrome. But so when I started out, I assumed, since nice guys were all saying the same thing I was saying, I assumed we were all alike and we all had the same ideology. We'd all developed our patterns from the same sources, family issues, societal. We all interact. But I found that no, nice guys can be very different. So to answer your question about people pleasers, most nice guys are people pleasers. Now, some nice guys are just people avoidant, right? And they stay away from people in general, maybe strong social anxiety, introverted, you mentioned earlier attachment styles, so maybe a real anxious attachment style. So they're really not trying to please anybody. They're actually just trying to avoid people and trying to avoid displeasing anybody. But a real strong pattern in nice guys typically is that people-pleasing, especially women-pleasing behavior. If I can make a woman happy, in fact, we just reverse it. Kind of the golden rule, maybe of most men nowadays, but especially nice guys, is don't piss off the woman. Which means I've got to do everything to please women. Hide anything, again, about me that might get a negative reaction and try to become what I think they want. So that really is the essence of people-pleasing. So that is often a component for nice guys.
Yeah. I was in the gym a few weeks ago. I think it was a couple of months ago now. And I was attempting a personal record on the bench press. And there was a couple of...
What were you attempting?
I think it's not very good. I think it was 70 at the time. Yeah, I think I got up to 80 this summer.
Kilos. Even though I live in Mexico and I think in kilos, and all the weights in the gym are still in pounds. So I'm thinking 70, 80 pounds. That's pretty good.
It's pounds a bit more, right? Yeah.
No. A kilo, I think, is about 2.5 pounds.
Mm. Yeah, so I don't know. Basically, it's roughly like my body weight.
Yeah.
Roughly my body weight. So that was cool. And there's a girl there in the gym, and she was filming it, right? And the first one, I didn't make it. My mate had to pull it up.
Yeah.
And she said, "Come on," she said, "think of all those girls that have said you're too nice." And I'm like,
And you go, where did that come from?
where did that come from?
Yeah.
And it was like, I was really shocked by it. I was like, hang on a minute. Like, 'cause she didn't know me that well, but I'm obviously like, that's the vibe
Yeah. That's
that I've given. He's the nice guy. Do you know what I mean?
And women can read that vibe from a mile away. And most of them have dealt with enough nice guys. They go, here we go again. Another nice guy.
Yeah.
Passively pleasing, try to entertain me, try to be funny, try to be, different than the other man, and he's completely hiding his sexual agenda. They've seen enough nice guys. They get it.
Yeah. I think I would say I'm probably more of a nice guy in recovery. When you talk about the, diagnosing, like I definitely had some of those traits. And it makes me think, like, in the last relationship I was in, I think it's like that inner self-belief where, like, it was almost like I'd be kind of like peering out of my box a bit, and I'd be like, right, that wall is definitely white. And then if, like, my ex would say, I think it's actually blue, Jason, I would go, oh, like, oh, is it blue?
Yeah.
Do you know, like, and I'd be questioning myself because I didn't have that self-belief. And I think now I'm definitely different. But you've got to do the work, right? I think, yeah, confidence, self-belief in yourself, and like the big one I picked up on is like the shame, the sexual shame. That's something I've talked about a lot on the podcast, and being like almost like a sanitized version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up around women. Dad was at home, but like worked a lot. So weekends would be mum and nana and auntie, and that kind of thing. So I think you sort of end up like picking up those things, right? Of like, oh, this is how I please women.
Well, if you think about it, the pleasing of women makes sense. We're all born of a woman. Our first caregiver was a woman, our mom. And as babies, we're completely, totally dependent. Our needs have to be met by our caregivers. And if we don't, we die. And so for most humans, and let's kind of narrow it down to us men, for the first few years of our life, our survival, our very life and death, needs were taken care of by women. So it makes sense that we would adapt to women. We would learn to try to please them because displeasing our caregiver is not a good idea. That's a life and death issue, right? And we don't think that out. It's emotional because we don't even start thinking these kind of things out till a few years later. But in the first couple of years of life, it's purely emotional. It gets registered down in our brainstem of fight, flight, freeze. I better make this person smile. I better make this person happy. I better not do anything that drives them away. Not thought, but survival emotion, right? So this is true for pretty much all human beings. Our first few years of life, we've got to figure out how to please a female caregiver to live, to survive, to not die. And so, this might be mom, it might become some other caregiver, it might be a nanny, it might be a babysitter, it might be au pair. We go to preschool, it's mainly women. We get into school. I don't know about where you grew up, but I had one male teacher, but by the time I got to 7th grade, junior high. And so for most boys, even getting from 2nd to 3rd grade, not only involves learning your reading, writing, and arithmetic, but how to please a woman. So this makes sense. And then basically we hit adolescence. We hit 12, 13, 14 years old, and it's kind of like, how do I please these women? Because, They look cute. They got boobs. They got butts now. And how do I do that? So it makes sense that most of us go from infancy to adolescence and then into adulthood trying to please women. Now, part of the problem is we never really do get it right. If we get mom to smile, great. If we get mom to laugh, great. If we get mom to give us a hug, great. But the problem with trying to fit into what we'll just call the feminine world, the feminine is the weather. Feminine is ever changing. Feminine is chaos. I'm not talking about specifically about women, but feminine. In terms of masculine, feminine, polarity and energy, yin and yang. The yin is that ever changing, unstable, unpredictable. Yang is the masculine, is consciousness. It rests in nothingness. Okay. So trying to please the feminine is a fool's errand. It can't be done. There's no standard. We'll bring it back to people and gender. One time you do something 1 minute, it makes mom happy. The next minute she ignores it or frowns or you get punished. That's feminine response. Now, the problem is not that we grew up in that feminine dominated experience. The problem is through most of human history, about the time you and I reached 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, somewhere in there, depending on culture, the men came along and said, come on, you're coming with us. Yeah, took us away from the nursery, took us away from mom's lap, took us away from the world of the feminine, right? Out into the world of the masculine. And now maybe we're going to help dad gather eggs for the chicken, or, milk the cows, or harvest a crop, or move boulders, or fight the enemy, or in the earlier days, more tribalists, we'd go through some sort of ritualized initiation where we had to deal with some death experience, where we had to face our fear of death, where we had to learn to be self-reliant and depend on other men, and
a rite of passage.
Comfortable. So rite of passage.
Yeah.
Most cultures have had these traditionally. And once the boy went through that rites of passage, he was forever now severed from the world of the feminine, the world of trying to please women and get their approval. He didn't have to anymore. He had the approval of the clan of the masculine. Now, the masculine world is cut and dry. You know when you've succeeded in the masculine world. You know when you've scored a touchdown. You know when you hit a home run. You know when you've made the basket. You know when you've made your first million. You know when you got your BMW. You know when you get your promotion in the military. You know what the ranks and levels are, and you know when you've achieved them. There's no ambiguity. Over here in the world of the feminine, it's constant ambiguity. Did I make her happy? Did I do it good enough? Is it okay? Does she like me? How come she's withdrawn? How come she's not smiling? How come she seems pissed off? What do I have to do different? This is total ambiguity. And that's where most men still live. Most men never been taken by initiated men through a rites of passage into the world of the masculine. And once you're in the world of the masculine and you have the approval of men, you are naturally attractive to the feminine. You don't have to go out and seduce the feminine. You don't have to go out and please the feminine. The feminine comes into your world and exists on your terms. You don't have to go to the feminine world and try to fit in on their terms so that you have their approval. And there's something about a guy who's not seeking the approval of women that's highly attractive to women. And there's a guy that seeks the approval of women that completely turns them off. And even if it doesn't disgust them, which it does at times, more than anything, it just doesn't light any kind of spark down below that they think, I wonder what he would feel like. Nice just doesn't do that. Nice is boring to the feminine. We think is pleasing. When we go, oh, what do you want to do tonight, dear? Or where do you want to go? Or for a single guy, I don't guess you'd want to go out with me sometime, would you? Or could I have your phone number? Or would you want to go on a date? It's just so there's nothing to turn the woman's crank. So that trying to please, and we think we're being nice by being different than the jerks, being different than the assholes, being different than the men we've heard women complain about that only want one thing from women. And the truth is we want that too, but we're trying to hide that from them because we think that pisses them off. The truth is they keep going back to the guy that only wants the one thing from them. They don't go to the nice guy who they spend hours complaining to about the guy that only wants one thing from them. So we think we're being nice and treating them well and treating them different than the jerks we've heard them complain about. But the truth is They just turn us into what I call a girlfriend with a penis. Oh, we're just, another girlfriend that they can talk to for hours and complain about, and because we'll listen to them. And for me, I was that girlfriend with the penis. I always thought I was special if a woman wanted to tell me her problems. Because this began for me probably by the time I could sit on my mother's lap and listen to her complain about my dad, which we did, which for years until I was in my 30s, I finally set a boundary with my mom. I'm not going to listen to you complain about dad anymore. Ended up not talking to her for 15 years because she couldn't handle that boundary that I wasn't there to listen to her complain about dad. Now, I thought I was special because she chose me to complain about my father. And then so I thought that's good seduction technique with women. I'll listen to them complain about their problems. And that'll make me special. They choose me. And the truth is I found out women will complain about their problems to anybody. Whoever will listen. Telemarketers, people at the checkout stand, their cat. We're not special just because a woman wants to tell us our problems. And if we're not trying to get their approval, we're actually just more upfront and say, I hear you have a problem, but I'm really not interested in it. It's the same old problem you complain about every day. And if you're not trying to seek approval, you can actually do that in a pretty loving way. Say, yeah, I'm not really interested. Hey, can you give me the guy version? But again, most of us have not been initiated into the masculine world where we know we have companions, we know we fit in, we know what the standards are, we know what's expected of us. So we're over there in the nursery, and so many men I work with, especially men, younger men, your generation, grew up with a cell phone in their hand, having things pushed to them, whether it be Netflix or cartoons, and now so many men just are in the nursery, just watching, pornography, surfing the internet, binging on Netflix, doom scrolling on Instagram, wasting time on YouTube, smoking pot, drinking, playing video games all night, World of Warcraft, and we can't figure out why women don't find us interesting. So anyway, probably got off on quite a bit of a tangent there. But yes, it is a common pattern of seeking that approval, especially the approval of women, primarily because most of us have not been initiated by men into the world of the masculine.
That was awesome. Yeah, I love a tangent away. I love getting into the weeds with this stuff, and it's you probably saw me there like making notes because I've so many different things that I want to go down. So, firstly, do women know what they want?
One of my favorite stories is when in my second marriage, my stepson and stepdaughter, they're in their late 30s and 40 now, but I remember years ago, my son was sitting on a couch watching television when he was about 12. This is my stepson. And with his sister sitting by her, I think she was doing her homework, but she was nearby. And he was watching a teenage drama. I think it was 90210. And in teenage dramas, the girls always do dramatic things, right? And that's why the teenagers watch it. And so my son's watching, and the female character must have been doing something, creating drama. And my then 12-year-old stepson looks over at his sister and says, "Why do girls do that?" And his sister looks up without a hesitation and goes, "How the hell do I know? I don't know why I do what I do half the time." And I was sitting back there and kind of witnessed it all, and I thought, that said it all. That was mic drop. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
How the hell do I know? I don't know why I do what I do half the time. Now, I'm not going to cast aspersions on women, but the feminine in us, feminine in you, in me, in a feminine identified, creature, the feminine is the weather. The feminine is ever changing. We always heard of the woman's prerogative is to change her mind, So 1 minute she wants this, 1 minute she wants that. 1 minute this is true, the next minute that's true. 1 minute she loves you and thinks you're amazing. When I was dating in my late 40s and 50s after my second divorce, I'd meet women. We'd go out a few times, and women, I'm not making this up, would tell me, "Robert, you're the most amazing man. I'm so lucky I found you. I'm just so, I'm grateful." I never hear from them again, ever. Or a few days later, after I haven't heard, they go, "Oh, I'm going to take a break from dating," or "I'm going to go give my ex a try." And I'm going, what happened? How does one day am I the most amazing man they ever met, and they're so lucky they found me, to the next day they're taking a break from dating. What happened? So one of the things I hear from men, single men especially, is about how flaky women can be out in the dating world. And I said, well, there's a reason most single women are single, right? Just keep that in mind. If they were actually good at relationship, they'd probably actually be in a relationship. But for, another example, when I'm, I mostly work with men, but occasionally I get to speak to audiences that have men and women both. And, often I'll speak about love and talk about we're here to get our heart broken. And we'll talk about we want to feel lovable, we want to love, and we want to be loved. And I'll make a generalization for the audience. And I'll say, in general, I find that men, if I ask them, they go, oh, I want to love. I want to love somebody deeply. And the women go, oh, I want to be loved, right? And it's a very different feel, right? And so, when I ask the question, the women always go, oh, yeah, I want to be loved. But then they'll often immediately go, and I've got this really great guy in my life, and he really treats me well, and he's amazing, but I just don't let him in. I just don't let him close. And the men are probably going, that doesn't make sense. You want to be loved. It's your greatest desire, and you have somebody or some buddies in your life who want to love you, and you don't let them. Now, for the male brain, the masculine mind, we're going, that makes absolutely no sense. But it is the thing that, because men won't usually raise their hand during the class and go, oh, I want to love. They usually wait till after the class, come up and talk to me and say, I didn't really want to raise my hand in the class, but you know what? You're right. I would rather love. And they go, how come the women don't let me? I go, listen to what they were saying. I said, it's their greatest desire to be loved, but it's also their greatest fear to be loved, because they open and let somebody love them, they can get hurt, because they always have gotten. So they guard themselves. So why do they say one thing and do another? I can't really say, other than that just does seem to be the hallmark of the feminine in us and in women, to emotionally want one thing but rationally do something else. And of course, what nice guys have heard too many times is women say, I want a nice guy. And they keep going back to the jerk. They keep going back to the guy that cheats on them, sleeps with their best friend, is a drug addict, steals their money, doesn't have a job, is a player, a womanizer, whatever it may be. They keep going back to that. Now, what I think happens here is, again, maybe it's just part of the female brain, maybe it's part of socialization, but there are certain kind of standards that women, think they're supposed to live up to, and men as well. And one of them is, well, for women, we do so much slut shaming in culture, and we have for centuries. Oh, I better not be overtly sexual, or I better say the right things that I want the nice guy. But the truth is, the bad boy triggers something in them, triggers an emotional tension that activates them, that they're drawn to. Now, is he a good relationship partner? No. But they're going more on a biological impulse, that there's more of a fierceness. Oh, he could provide and protect. He could be the killer. He could, he could save me. Whereas the nice guy, he couldn't kill a goddamn thing. He couldn't protect me from anything. Now, and there may just be a purely neurological, biological thing going on here. There was a study, I don't know, 10 years ago, I came across it, and it made a lot of news. It was a scientific study. I think it was done in Canada, probably on college students, because that's what most studies are done, because college students sign up because they need the money. So they go do psychological studies. And the reason the study created a lot of buzz in media, mainstream media, magazines, newspapers, I saw several articles about the study, was what they did is they took men and women, and they'd put them in a booth, and they would wire them basically to be able to measure their sexual arousal states. I never pronounce the word, but on men, they put the penile plethysmogram. I can't say it. Basically, it just measures engorgement in the male penis. And in women, they did a similar thing that measured engorgement inside their vagina. And they put them in a booth, gave them a little TV screen, and showed them erotic content. Now, they also had a button that they could push. Now, the button they'd push anytime they felt arousal. Now, of course, they're also being measured physiologically around the arousal. And so what they discovered, and what made the media, because this is kind of interesting, is that men are pretty straightforward. in general. Men, if they're straight, tended to be attracted to heterosexual sex. Most often, men don't like to see other men in the sex. They just like the women. If they was gay, they're pretty much drawn to gay sex. And, that's pretty much it. Man, woman, copulate, or man, copulate. Women, on the other hand, were attracted to a much bigger variety of things. They were attracted to, homosexual sex, lesbian sex, straight sex, animal sex, rape scenes, apes copulating with each other. They were, both in terms of pushing the button and being measured, they got aroused by a much wider variety of things. Now, that made the media a pretty big deal. A woman named Nancy Friday wrote a book several years ago, probably now 40, 50 years ago, called My Secret Garden, where she interviewed women about their fantasies. And nobody had ever done this before. And, there's a list of the top 10 female fantasies, pretty common. And rape is on there. There's just a whole thing that taboo kind of stuff. And it's like the world was shocked. Women think about those things. So that was the big deal. Women have a much broader, robust sexual fantasy. More things turn women on than turn men on. It was statistically different. I went and read the original study because, I have a doctorate. I've read a lot of research studies in my life. And what did not get reported in the media that I think is equally interesting to what did get reported is that when it came to men, what aroused them as measured by an electronic device and by the button they pushed, they were statistically similar. If the machine said they were aroused, they pushed the button. If they weren't aroused, they didn't push the button. So men were really consistent. They basically knew what they were feeling in their bodies. The women, on the other hand, the difference between what the machine said they were aroused by and what their button was significantly statistically non-aligned.
Stated and revealed preferences.
Their body would say I'm aroused, but their mind didn't. Or their mind might say I'm aroused, but their body wasn't. It was a statistical significant difference. So I don't know if this just applies to sex, but it could apply to everything. That the woman may think one thing to be true, but physiologically something else is very true for her. She may think she wants a nice guy, but physiologically the nice guy doesn't turn her on. Bad boy does. So again, I don't know if this is just about sex. I can't extrapolate the results of this and apply it to everything else that women do. But it is a good starting point to just point out that there's good reason when I tell men, pay attention to what women do, not what they say. Pay attention, because if you pay attention to what they say, they'll make you crazy. So just pay attention to what they do. It's a better barometer if you want to know what reality is.
Can you give me an example of that?
Okay. One of the things, I want a nice guy, but going back to the jerks, probably the example most of us know. As a marriage therapist, I started working with couples 40 years ago. So I've worked with a lot of couples. I've been married 3 times. So, I've been down the road of relationship. Probably the most common things I see couples fight about. And I'm primarily talking about heterosexual couples, but it's interesting. You'll see the same thing with gay couples and lesbian couples. And I'll make just kind of a side note here, is that it seems like in both the gay world and the lesbian world, they really understand polarity. They understand masculine, feminine polarity. That you have to have a pitcher, you have to have a catcher. You have to have a top, you have to have a bottom. You have to have a dominant, you have to have a sub, right? They tend to get that. Straight couples, we've been kind of, we're all the same, we're all equal, it's all the same. And so straight people tend to have pretty boring sex life. I'm making a generalization because we've been told, dominance and submission are bad. Pitcher, catcher, no, why can't any person do what they want? We should be able to. Well, you're right, you can. And there should be a reciprocity. It tends to work better. But to really have polarity, to have an intensity, there does have to be, a doer and a done too. Okay? So it just works out that way. So what happens is this polarity is actually usually there even in the heterosexual relationships. And what happens, the fights that I often see, and I'm gonna make a gender generalization, so take it as a generalization. Most of the fights I've seen between couples, the woman, or let's say the more feminine identified person in the relationship, will make an emotional statement. The more masculine identified person in the relationship will hear it as a factual statement and want to argue the facts of it. And so what happens is the woman says, you just don't love me anymore. And because she's not feeling loved in that moment, it's an emotional statement. And the masculine, male usually, partner goes, well, that's just not true. Look at all this, what I do for you. And look at, I do this for you. And I tell you, I love you all the time. And I do this for, and the woman now is still not feeling any more loved because the guy's arguing the facts with her. Mm-hmm. And the guy's beginning to feel like, I don't even know what she's talking about. She's batshit crazy. She's saying the wall's blue and I'm sure it's white. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's where a really big pattern will show up is the emotional statement of the feminine that the masculine male mind just cannot fathom, can't understand. And I like to give this example of it. I was doing a workshop a few years ago, and my wife was traveling out of town to Guadalajara, Mexico. And right before I started the workshop, I got a text from her that said, "You haven't said you love me all day." And I'm thinking, about 5 minutes, I'm going to start this workshop. And she's saying, "You haven't said," and so I knew she was upset. And the dude in me, the guy in me, would have just naturally argued that fact because I knew it was untrue. Mm-hmm. But I heard the emotional statement. And I just wrote her back. So I'm about to get started. I love you so much. I'm so grateful that you're my wife. Have an amazing time, in Guadalajara with your family. And then, later that night, I got back to my house. I was holding this in a hotel, but I was staying at my house. It was nearby. So I'm in bed that night, and I go, I know I said I loved her. So I got on WhatsApp, and I scrolled. 5 times that day, I texted her on WhatsApp that I love her. So I took screenshots of all, because I'm a dude. And I wasn't gonna club her over the head with it, but I just thought I had to test my own reality, right? I knew you knew the wall was white. Yeah. How do you test the reality? So yeah. So and by the way, they do this stuff a lot of times just to stir up some drama, just because they want to feel a connection to you. They want to be engaged. They don't care if the tension feels bad to you, as long as they have the tension that they feel like they're connected to you. So I just, sent my wife a lot of loving messages, and she got home Sunday night, she rode the bus to Guadalajara, rode it back, but a 5-hour bus ride back then. And so we're getting to bed that night, and she lies next to me, and she goes, "I owe you an apology." I go, "Oh, really?" She says, "Yeah, Friday night I said you hadn't said you loved me all day." I go, "Yeah, I remember." And she goes, "On the bus ride home, I'm just looking through my phone. I was looking at WhatsApp," and she goes, "Actually, you said you loved me 4 times on Friday." I said, "Actually, it was 5. I got the screenshots." And we both just laughed about it because, she was just making an emotional statement. "I don't feel loved right now. I feel distant from you. I don't know where you're at, what you're doing, who you're with." And, but it came out like, "You haven't said you love me all day." So often one of the biggest problems we see between men and women is not recognizing, is this an emotional statement or a factual statement? And men will then go, "Well, how do I know it's an emotional statement?" And I go, the reason you know it's an emotional statement is twofold. One, it seems batshit crazy to you. And 2, you want to argue it. That's how you know it's an emotional statement, not a factual statement. So if you can catch a breath, and now, having been, trying to figure out relationships for a long time, one thing that seems to be a good standard for me now is if my wife makes what appears to be an emotional statement or just an emotional act that I don't understand, right, is that I'll break it down. Instead of my projection of, I'm going to argue the facts, I'm going to vindicate myself, I'm going to try to get you back to good, whatever, is I think, okay, either my wife's not feeling sufficiently loved by me right now, not feeling sufficiently connected to me right now, or not feeling sufficiently secure with me right now. And is there anything I can do about any of those 3 things? I don't have to fix anything, but can I give her more love? Can I create a deeper connection? Sometimes that even just means saying, come here, touching her, saying, look in my eyes, maybe nibbling on her neck a little bit, saying, you know how much I love you. Just anything that all of a sudden she comes back into a sense of connection and security and love. Don't have to argue any of the facts she's saying. In fact, it's better to tune most of those things out. She's saying, you did this, you did that, you did. Come here. No, come here. I don't want to come here. Come here. Come here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm creating some dominance. I'm leading. And then if she kind of comes here, look me in the eyes. I don't want to look me in the eyes. And if I can get her in the now, connected, present, grounded, breathing with her, looking in my eyes, calm is contagious. And it seems to calm her down. And then she feels now the connection, the flow of love. She's in the moment, not in her head, not projecting. And I found so often that's what really women say they want from the guy, is to be that rock, to be that grounded thing, that solid thing. My second wife used to say to me, I'm your Bermuda Triangle, you're my Rock of Gibraltar. She knew. She made me crazy. And she was grateful that I didn't, well, often I would, but at times don't follow her down her emotional rabbit hole, down into her craziness. I tell guys, women don't really want you on their roller coaster or in their emotional rabbit hole with them. They really want you with your feet on the ground saying, I'm still here. I'm still here. So I think if you kind of go with, for men listening, say, okay, if a woman does or says something that you just don't understand, don't go looking for the rational logic in it. Go looking for the emotional logic.
Yeah, what's she trying to communicate here that she's feeling?
And it usually is a feeling.
Yeah. And a lot of that, it makes me think as well about insecure attachment styles as well, because the tendency might be, this is me, what have I done, rather than like stepping out, zooming out, oh, actually, what's going on here, like objectively. I was thinking if there's any women listening.
So should we assume there's at least one or two women listening, or
one or two
dudes?
Hello, lady. It's a mix.
It's all guys. Okay. There's women listening.
Yeah, it's 50-50. Hello, ladies. And let's say they're listening and they go, nah, I don't want to. I like a nice guy. I like a feminine guy.
I want to be in charge. I want to drive.
I want to be.
I want to tell them what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say? What are your thoughts? What do you say?
Knock yourself out. Knock yourself out. I see it all the time. And I see it especially with the younger generation, millennials, Generation Z. You've all grown up being told you're all equal. There is no gender. I mean, I was taught that in grad school in the 80s. There's no gender. Gender is just a social construct imprinted on little children, so that boys are aggressive and competitive and girls are cooperative. And there's absolutely no evidence, no studies that actually support that. It's hogwash. But it's been taught in graduate schools to teachers, it's taught in the school system. I have a friend that teaches sexuality to elementary school kids, and they teach them there's as many genders as there are people in the world. Well, it's hogwash. I mean, it's not true, but it's taught as truth. And I'm not a big fan of squeezing people into gender roles. You're a guy, therefore you should. You're a woman, therefore you should. You're a guy, you should dominate. You're a woman, you should submit. I mean, I'm not a fan of that. But I'm also not a fan of saying, I'm non-binary. I have no gender. No, that doesn't work. So what I see in these relationships, again, when I was in graduate school, while I was being taught there was no gender, I was also being taught that everything masculine, this is before the word toxic masculine, everything masculine does is bad because it's competitive, but everything girls do is good because it's cooperative. And again, no value judgment was being put on male-female behavior, but it was, right? Mm-hmm. And this was all coming from female feminist teachers. And I pretty much bought into most of it at the time. But what's happening now, we've got a bunch of passive cooperative men walking around and a bunch of competitive kick-ass girls walking around. We got women get more advanced degrees than men. They're rising up in the workplace more than men. And there's a book that just came out, and I interviewed the author of it on my men's program yesterday. It's Dr. Orion Taraban. He's got a podcast called Psych Hacks. And his book is called The Values of Others. And he talks about the sexual marketplace of how people attract in this whole sexual marketplace. And he talks about something I'd never heard of before called the two body problem. And it's kind of like, having two chefs, two pilots on the airplane, two people with the remote control in their hand. But basically the two body problem refers to two people that both have invested, in their education, their career. They both have, really invested a lot of time and energy. And unfortunately, they create a redundancy that neither one really necessarily needs the other one. And they're both so invested in career that there's no real room left over for relationship. And he said what happens basically is that, and this is what I've seen, is the women that have been out there, following this pattern, you need a career, you need your education, don't ever be dependent on a man. They get out there and they do this, and the workplace, especially like technology companies, really encourage it. Someone told me the other day that Meta pays women to have their eggs frozen, because they're working right through their most fertile periods of life. And these tech companies want to keep the women working for them. They have an investment in them. And so, you can have a baby later. Freeze your eggs, right?
Freeze them till you're 70.
Yeah, till you're 70. So what happens is these women hit about now 38. 40 seems to be the magic number of their clock ticking. And they go, I'm ready to settle down, find a man, and have a baby or two. I need the fashion accessory of a child, But there's the biological clock is ticking. Now they decide to start looking for the man. But unfortunately, like most women, they want a man probably who's outperforming them, monetarily, career-wise, and they look around and they go, where are those guys? They're not here. Because the men who are outperforming them probably have already, hooked up with some woman that maybe is younger and maybe they're already having a family. One of my, actually a good friend of mine, I was talking to him, he lives in Ireland, and he's very successful. He's in the medical profession, very successful. And he was telling me he was dating a woman who worked at Meta. That's how I found out about freezing the eggs.
All right.
And they dated for about 3 months. And he said he was hanging out with her and about 3 of her friends. They all worked for tech companies, all make good money. And he said the women were all saying basically if they were going to get married, they'd want the man to, at the very minimum, own his own home and make double their income. Now, these are women making good money, double their income. And they're going, that's what I'm holding out for. It's kind of like the guys who tell me, if I can't date a 10, I'm not going to date at all. Like, if I can't drive a Bentley, I'm not going to drive. Women are going, if he doesn't own a home and isn't outperforming me, I don't want him. But they're looking around and go, where is that guy? And actually, they're not particularly attractive.
So that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And their bar, not only is their bar high, so there's no men out there to meet it, the men who would meet it don't want them.
Because they can get whoever they want.
I can get whoever I want. And I don't need you as a breadwinner because I already make double you, double. So what do I need you for? And you're going to want to keep your career once we have a baby, and, the baby needs someone to raise them. We're not going to farm them out to nannies or whatever. So what's happened, and I mean, I'm a big fan of, I think everybody should do whatever they're called to do, evolve in whatever ways, challenge yourself in whatever ways. But just like I think nice guys believe the myth, if I just treat women well and be different than the jerks, they'll like me and love me and want to get naked with me. It's a myth. Women have believed the myth, if they're high performing, never need a man, they're going to have everything they want in life. That's part of the mythology of feminism. You can have it all. No, you can't have it all. You can't. We only have so much time and energy. We only have so many choices we can make, and every choice we make rules out about 100 million other choices we can't make. That's just reality of life. So you can't make the choice of, I'm going to, go to school, have a career, focus on that, not date, not get into a relationship, or if I do get with men, I'm going to dominate them. Wait till I'm ready to have a baby, and then say, I should be able to find a good man who outperforms me and who will let me continue to have my career and have a baby too. Good luck. Good luck. It's a mythology, but, they believe it should be true. When I'm talking 20 years ago now, when No More Mr. Nice Guy was published by Barnes and Noble. My editor at Barnes and Noble was a woman, and before the book got published, the company, was publishing it along with Barnes and Noble, brought me back to New York City. And I met with a lot of, they had a Christmas party, so I met with a lot of the people in the publishing company. And my editor and her boyfriend took me out along with a female friend of hers and her boyfriend. And I think my editor, I think her boyfriend might have been an attorney, and the two other people might have been attorneys, all professional people, all in their mid-30s. All that both women could talk about while we're out to eat was, they both had successful careers, but all they could talk about is, they kind of just really wanted to settle down and have kids and have a family. They bought the myth that, oh, I can have it all, but they kind of restage and go, it hasn't made me happy. And I want to have a family. And, I'm not big on social media, but, back when I was on Facebook, I'd see my former editors 20 years ago would occasionally put some post on. I think she's got 3 or more kids now. They're probably, teenagers and maybe approaching adulthood even now. So this myth of you can have it all is so seductive to young women. Just go achieve. And really what it says, go being your masculine, and then try to find some man who is even more masculine than you, all the while they're being told, but don't submit to anybody. Don't be in a dominant, submissive position whatsoever. And it'd be nice if it worked, but it doesn't tend to.
Yeah, and it's really sad. It's really sad, but like when you think about it, and because these women have worked hard, they've done everything that society has told them to do.
Yeah.
And like you say, are getting to this stage in their life and going, fuck.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, you really can't discover this until you hit about your mid-30s or late.
Yeah.
And then you start discovering it, and then you've got a lot of sunk cost. This is your identity, it's your direction, it's what you went to school for, so you paid a lot of money, and you're making good money. That's hard for anybody to walk away from, man or woman.
I think
so. It's difficult.
And a lot of those women as well probably rode that wave of the environmental thing, or it's good for the environment anyway, so I'm not going to have a kid or whatever. And that argument has started to fall away now, as we realize population collapse could be a thing and the rest of it.
Yeah, that could be detrimental too. If we quit having kids. Well, it'd be detrimental to the capitalistic market that we're so dependent on. Capitalism might have to take a reset. If we quit having so many consumers. So yeah, it's good idea to keep consumers around to keep capitalism going.
Yeah, and someone to wipe your ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally open, about having children, and one of my deepest fears is just dying alone, because
kids won't protect you from that. Kids won't protect you from that.
Well, yeah, but see, unfortunately, I've had a lot of grandparents die fairly recently in the last few years, and for instance, my granddad, and he had dementia as well, so the family sort of chipped in with trying to look after him and bits and bobs, and he's it was really nice that we were able to be there when he was dying in hospital, but I'm looking around, and I go, okay, so it's my dad and his brother, that's his sons, and there's my sister, and there's me, and there's my cousins. Had he not had those children, there's no one there. And it was whoa.
I actually did some research on this subject. Like I said, I'm a researcher by nature. When I was in grad school, I was in my late 20s, and my wife and I were both going to school at that time. This is my first wife. And we didn't know if we wanted kids, right? She was oldest of 5, and she'd raised her younger brothers and sisters. And I was just ambivalent. It didn't really matter. I was a nice guy. I don't care, whatever. If you want kids, we'll have kids. You don't want kids, we won't have kids. And so I actually did research meta research on other research of, do people regret it if they don't have kids when they get old? And I presented actually a paper at the University of Nebraska in the United States on that subject. What I found out, that people seem to be the happiest if they got what they wanted in life, especially when it came to the child thing. If they wanted kids and had kids, they're pretty happy. If they didn't want kids and didn't have them, they were happy. If they wanted kids but couldn't have them, they were pretty unhappy. If they didn't want kids but kids got forced on them, they were unhappy.
Yeah.
Now, of all the groups, the happiest people were the childless people, the ones that never had kids.
Because controlled for that need. Yeah.
Yeah, they got what they wanted, but they were the happiest of the whole bunch, because as romantic and even just evolutionarily wired as we are to have kids, we romanticize the having of children. Children never match the romance story we create about, just like love and marriage never matches the romance stories we create about. Many of the parents that had children suffered tremendously because of their children. Suffered economically, suffered because their kids were addicts, suffered because their kids didn't seem to want to be around them or love them in their old age. So a lot of people with kids still died alone because their kids didn't want to be around them. Whereas the people who didn't have kids had already built enough of a relational base with enough people that they didn't die alone. And because they had friends, they had their family that they'd created in life around them. And we're all going to die alone anyway, if it really comes down to it. But having children is not a guarantee you got someone at your bedside when you die. And actually, those who don't depend on their kids create friendships and relationships that often are meaningful and lifelong, and they are there at your side, or you're there at their side when they die. So, yeah, don't count on kids to do anything. Count on kids to be consumers, that they will consume resources. Used to be, well, no, it's the truth. I mean, just economically, it's true. Used to be kids were an asset. The more kids you had, the better, because they worked. They worked, on the farm. They cut wood. They milked cows. They helped you in the field. They created income that brought to the family, and they did take care of you in your old age back before we had Social Security. They used to be an economic asset. Children are now a total, complete economic liability. Children will never contribute to your financial well-being. They will just suck your bank account dry. And I'm not anti-kid. I've got a biological son, and I've raised 4 stepkids, and I love them dearly, right? And they're all economic liabilities. Always have been, always will be. That's not the nature of my kids. That's just the nature of children in the current world we live. So I'm not saying don't have kids, but whatever romantic or fantasy ideal you have of what your kids will do for you, it's the same thing I tell men when it comes to relationship. Whatever your male brain says a woman can do for you, it's wrong. I tell women, whatever your female brain thinks a man can do for you, it's wrong. And whatever, you and your partner's brains think a child will do for you, it's wrong as well. They won't.
Food for thought. Yeah, that's an interesting...
Got that bubble burst.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I just doing my job. That's why I love working with men. They'll go, thank you, Robert, I think.
Yeah, you've got the cogs turning there, because then I'm like, oh shit, like, and then I've got like the shame response where I'm like, oh God, I was like codependent on these kids that I haven't even had yet.
But that is pretty good. I've been blamed. I've been accused of doing things in the future that I haven't done yet, right? So you're now feeling codependency of a future codependency for something you haven't done.
Yeah.
So a future shame attack for some future codependency about wanting to get. And I tell you what though, kids are great. I'm grateful I had kids. I love my son dearly. He just turned 39 this week. He's a great human being. He's he's a primary he has custody of my granddaughter, who will be 18 in October. He's raised her. He got divorced when she was less than 2, and he's raised her. She's an amazing human being. I love my granddaughter. Just love her to death. So kids, I feel blessed that I've raised kids. Like I said, I've raised 4 that weren't my own, 2 of my second marriage, 2 of my third marriage. Right now, my stepkids are 18. My stepson's 18. My stepdaughter's 16. Like I said, my granddaughter's 17. So my kids are the same age as my granddaughter. So I'm just getting, and every time I've raised kids, I've kind of raised them a little differently. I raised my current stepkids almost like they're my grandkids. A little bit of structure, a little bit of discipline. Well, they know where the boundaries are, but lots of love. Just lots and lots of love. Kind of like grandparents tend to love on their grandkids.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That seems to work.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what would your advice be to me? So, like, kids aside, so I'm single, and I've been single for like 3 years, and it's been like this period of like self-improvement. Like, I gave up drinking, I got really into the gym, I started the podcast, I started journaling, all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll always like say my stated preferences are: I want a family, I want a girlfriend. That's kind of like my number one goal. But as you would imagine, in terms of like performing stuff towards a goal, not that much. I mean, like, I'm on the dating apps, I might do the occasional date, but everything is the podcast, it's work, it's the gym, fill in the blank, all that other stuff.
How old are you?
35.
35. Okay. Yeah, let's dive into this, because there's probably a lot of 35-year-old guys, or, in that ish range.
I aim to be like, so my own audience.
Yeah, like I said, well, I write books in the same way. I write the book I'd want to read. Instead of trying to figure out what does my audience want to read, what do I want to read? And there'll be a few people maybe that like, where you're at. I got 2 or 3 different thoughts. Like I said, I was talking to Dr. Taraban yesterday, and he says in his book, the Value of Others, he says he thinks that, he said yesterday when I was talking with him, he thinks most men probably should wait till about 35 before they even consider getting married. Have a lot of life experiences, kind of get yourself established. Do what you're doing, right? And I can't disagree with him. Now, I was married twice before I was 35. And yeah, I married at 21, 2 days after I graduated from college. And looking back on it, I didn't know what I wanted at 21. I had no clue. And so that was just mainly a lot of codependency, a lot of fear, why I got married. And it takes getting into your 30s to get some clarity. You probably took getting into your 30s to go, I don't think drinking serves. It took a while, right?
Yeah.
You had to figure that one out. You get to a point and go, I actually feel better when I work out regularly. I just feel better in general. I'm more optimistic. I'm in a better mood. I feel more masterful. I love the challenge. I feel like I can take on other challenges. And now you're trying things. You're taking on new challenges. You probably still don't know exactly what's going to, float your boat, light your fire, but you're trying. You're trying things. And it just takes time, really, to develop that. I mean, your prefrontal cortex, or reasoning part of your brain, didn't finish getting wired up till you're about 25. So you've just been using a fully functioning brain for only about 10 years now, right? So
that's an interesting one. Yeah, I'm basically 10.
Yeah, you're 10 in terms of your ability to make rational decisions.
Been an adult for 10 years.
You've been and that's okay. That's okay. And so that's the dynamic. And now here's another piece to this. When people tell me, especially guys around your age, and that are either still just kind of, trying to figure out what they're about, or guys that maybe have had their success, they've been in their career, usually a little bit older, maybe mid-40s, maybe they're doctors, maybe they're attorneys, maybe they're successful podcasters. I won't mention names, but a very successful podcaster shared with me after my last interview with him that he was single again out in the dating world. And I asked him, well, what do you want? He goes, well, I think I'd like a wife and a family. I'd like kids. And I told him what I tell a lot of successful men who decide now they want a family. I go, that's too bad. That's going to cause you to suffer. And they kind of look at me and they go, why? Because getting married is going to cause me to suffer? And I go, yeah, it will, but that's not my point. And they go, well, because kids are going to cause me to suffer? And I go, yeah, they will, but that's not my point either. My point is when we go into the dating world with an agenda, believe it or not, it makes dating weird. And it doesn't actually get you the best possible partner for whatever it is you want. And here's why, for a few reasons. One is if you're now looking for, in your mid-30s or say mid-40s even, you're now looking for a woman to, be the mother of your children. Well, she's got to be of a certain age. Odds are maybe doesn't have children yet, so maybe not been married or not had kids prior to you. So you're narrowing down the base that you have to choose from. So now you're only looking for a certain archetype of woman. Kind of the rest don't even exist. You don't even see them, don't even notice them, because you're focused on who would be, potential mate, spouse, mother of my children. So you're narrowing it down that way, ruling out other people. You're investing yourself in women who logistically look like the good choices, and you have to rule them in or rule them out quickly because you don't want to waste your time on somebody that's not going to fit what it is you're looking for long term. You might even try to vet and rule somebody in that's on the fringes of what you want. Maybe, yeah, she's young enough, doesn't have kids yet, but she's still going through that party phase. She still drinks quite a bit. She's still on her phone and social media all the time. She still talks about stupid stuff that bore you to tears. But you try to make it work because she is attractive. She does fit the logistic you're looking for. She's young enough to have kids. She hasn't had kids. So you're now putting a round peg in a square hole. You're ignoring stuff that should be paid attention to, that she drinks too much. She's on social media too much, and she's just stupid and bores you to tears. But she's hot and might fit your other parameters. Mm-hmm. So you're going to try to make that work until it just doesn't, usually 9 to 12 months after. Now you start over again. Now, another piece is that you never actually even consider or rule in people that don't match your criteria who might be an amazing life partner for you. All right? Now, I'll use my wife as an example. When I met her, everything about her, should have been like red flags. This is not a good... Now, because I wasn't looking for her to start a family, I wasn't looking for anything. I'd had it all. I had everything I needed in life. But so when we met, I was just able to just enjoy hanging out with her. And so she's 22 years younger than me, Mexican. We didn't speak the same language. I got a PhD at 29. She dropped out of high school at 15. 2 young kids, living in poverty, basically. Hardworking, smart, highly intelligent, thought I was amazing, loved having sex with me. So, we just had sex about once a week for a year. That was our whole relationship. I never perceived it as anything more than that. So for about a year, we just had sex. Saturday, she'd come to my house. We'd have some margaritas. We'd, head to the bed. She'd even just skip dinner. That was a waste of time. Yeah, let's go get in the bed. So we'd have sex. I'd give her taxi money, give her babysitter money, and see you next week. And so that went on for about a year. And then after about a year, one night she said, I like being with you. I know that was scary for her to say that, and it scared me when she said it. That wasn't what I was looking at. Next week I saw her, I said, you said that last week? And she said, yeah, I know it scared you. I said, yeah, you're right. I said, but I thought about it, and I like being with you. So we actually kind of started dating, doing things together, spending more time. I met her kids, got to see more of her world, met family, things like that. And about a year and a half of that, I thought, this woman's amazing. Moved her in, even though I said I'd never live with a woman again, never get married again, never raise another man's kids. We moved in, I married her, and I'm raising her kids. And I don't regret it for a minute. She's an amazing human being. She treats me like gold. She's smart. She can get anything done. She just, again, she thinks I'm amazing. She loves sex. She complains if we don't have enough sex. She's charismatic. She lights up a room anywhere she goes. She treats my mother like gold. My mother loves her. My mother was not fond of any of my previous wives. And she's just an amazing human being. But if I had a parameter of here's what I'm looking for and only dated within that parameter, I would not have met this woman who's blessed my life in every way and even saved my life. Literally, I'd be dead right now if she had not. Longer story, but I was dying of a tumor in my small intestine. Nobody could figure out what was wrong. I was dying. I lost 30 pounds. I was in pain. Finally, she just dumb luck stumbled onto the right doctor who ran the right test, who did the right surgery. I'm alive and ticking. I would have died. I was on deathbed. So she's so amazing. But if I was dating within just certain parameters, a woman that we just got together and fucked once a week for a year, that's a good way to find out if she's good, long term. Probably not the best way to find out, but it worked out okay. So my advice, if you want advice, is while you're building your kingdom, also be practicing your dating skills. Don't just look at the apps. Use them. And I'm actually a bigger fan of actually just being more of a social animal. Getting out in public more, interacting, not going out cruising or pickup or hitting on women, just getting out and interacting with people wherever you go. Because again, go back to Dr. Taraban's book. He says the number one thing that attracts women is lifestyle. What is the lifestyle that this woman gets to come into? Because like I've always preached to men, go as slowly as possible to find out as quickly as possible what a woman's nature is and how she fits into your amazing life. And the way I put that is you need to have a great cake of a life. Good guy friends, leaning into challenge, regular strenuous physical exercise, giving back into the world in some way, some spiritual, development in your life, personal development. You need to have your own great cake that doesn't need a woman in it. But a woman would be the icing on top of that great cake. And a woman would be lucky to get to come and be a part of your lifestyle. So as you develop a lifestyle that you fucking love, then you get to invite a great woman to come be the icing on top of that. You can have a great cake without icing. Icing just makes it sweeter. But what so many men do is we make the woman our cake or a key ingredient in our cake. I can't be happy or have a great life without a woman. Yeah, you can. You really can. It seems like everybody I know is either unhappy because they're not in a relationship or unhappy because they are in a relationship, right? Yeah. So you can have an amazing kick-ass life. And in fact, I think you'll have a lot better relationships if you have that great cake. Now, a lot of guys say, well, I'll wait till I make my great cake, then I'll start dating. That's kind of like women say, I'll wait till I got my career established and I'll have kids. I'm a big believer, if it's valuable to you, go work on that skill set as well. Work on the skill set of meeting and connecting with a lot of women. Go have what I call an integrated man-whore phase. Go sleep with a lot of women. Go say yes to a lot of sexual opportunities. I did that, but I was in my 40s and 50s.
I was in my 20s.
yeah, but that might have been your drunken man-whore phase.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm guessing. But a conscious man-whore phase is very different. You're very authentic. You're very real. The women know they're not the only one, and they're okay with that. Because
it's hard to be a man whore,
one of them.
It's very difficult. It's very
different than doing it drunk.
Yeah.
It's very different.
But that comes down to that's the self-confidence part. That's
go work on that then. Go work on your self-confidence. You're not gonna just absorb self-confidence from the self-confidence gods. Men get self-confidence through repeated action that leads to mastery.
Yeah.
That's where confidence comes from. You do something enough times that you go, yeah, I'm confident. I'm good at this. I do enough interviews. A few weeks ago, I did 11 in 1 week. So I do anywhere from 2 to 5 to 7 interviews a week. You're my first of 2 today. I had 2 yesterday. I'm confident. I do it enough. I'm good at it. I know I'm good at it. And, because I know I'm good at it, I don't have to be cocky. I don't have to show off. I just show up and do well because I know I can handle whatever comes. Whatever comes, I know I've seen it before. I'll handle it. But that's come from experience. So, yeah, go get confident with the women without the alcohol. That's your next task of mastery in front of you.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing a little challenge actually, like maybe once a week I've got to speak to a strange woman.
Once a week, that's not a challenge. What?
I was thinking like a Saturday night, I'll just...
Once a day, talk to 3 people you don't know, not just a woman. Once a day. That means you got to get out of your house, expand your route, linger in public, talk to the people you meet, test for interest, and then walk through the open doors. I ended every Dating Essentials for Men podcast.
3. Wow.
3 days.
Sometimes
3
I don't...
people you do not know. Even if you don't feel like it, 3 people just say, how's your day going so far? Just people in line next to you. You're not going to walk across a room and start a conversation. But a barista in a coffee shop, a waiter or a waitress, a bartender. Ask 3 people. Ask, a bar. You're not in bars, but when I don't drink much, but I'd have a lot of my meals in bars because I could talk to the people around me when I was single. I knew every bartender in town. I knew their names. They knew me. And, people look around and go, who is this guy? He knows a lot of bartenders. Maybe he's a drunk. I don't know. But I came across as charismatic. It's kind of the king of, my realm. Go to work on being a masterful, confident social animal where you can talk to anybody, anywhere. And it just begins with just asking, how's your day going so far? Hey, where are you from? Just that. It starts a conversation, and then just observe, just observe. Just notice, do they have a high interest in having a conversation or low interest? And either way, great.
I'll let you know how...
make anything happen.
I'll let you know how I get on.
Yeah, you haven't accepted the challenge yet, I know.
That's like half of my foot is in the challenge. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking, oh yes, because some days it's a struggle to even see anyone because I work from home sometimes, and I'm going,
get the fuck out of your house.
Yeah.
I tell people, miracles happen around people, and unless you got a living room full of people, you're not going to experience any miracles. Miracles happen when you're outside your house around people. One of my mantras is I love waking up in the morning not knowing how my day's going to end. The more I get out of my house, the more that's a high likelihood. The more I stay in my house, the more each day is going to look pretty much like yesterday.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
So true. Everything's better once you get out the house.
And engage with people. Everybody. Not just attractive women. Men, women, young, old, dogs, cats, babies. Engage with them all. Practice that skill. Get confident. Get masterful. And then all of a sudden you notice, oh, that really attractive woman just was really into me. And in the past, you wouldn't even talk to her because she was too attractive. But now you just talk to everybody. And you find out that includes attractive women that really seem to be interested in you because you're the kind of social animal. Your lifestyle appears to be something they'd like to come be a part of.
Yeah, I think how many times I do it, actually. I was thinking then, and yeah, when I'm in a really good mood, I'll just chat to people. But yeah, it's been
when you're in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Do it all the time.
Do it all the time.
Otherwise, what great woman's going to want to come hang out with? Oh, he's at home all the time working on a podcast. What do you have to offer her? What about that makes you attractive? Now, women do want to know you're a hard-working ass, right? That you get the job done, that you're making a difference, you're putting a dent in the cosmos. But they better see that you got a lifestyle around you that they want to come be a part of.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Good place to end it.
Yeah. No, this has been so good. Where should direct people the website?
2 places. One is drglover.com, drglover.com. My courses, my workshops, my podcasts are all there. The other is integrationnation.net. That's my men's membership program we launched a year ago. If you want a men's group, a men's program, a way to connect with other conscious men, check out integrationnation.net.
Amazing. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day, whatever you're up to.
Got another interview coming up, a few clients, and then I'm going to get out of the house.
Yeah, wonderful. And yeah, let's keep in touch.
Yeah. So when you do your 100th episode, invite me back.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert.
All right. You're welcome, Jay.
Bye-bye.
Have a great evening. Bye.